Welcome, curious minds. Today, we're taking a really deep dive into the Dominican Republic. Now, you probably think beaches, right? And
Yeah.
yeah, definitely, the beaches are incredible. But there's so much more. It's really a fascinating country, vibrant culture, super diverse landscapes, and, well, some practical things you kind of need to know to really get the most out of it. So our mission today is to unpack a whole bunch of sources, articles, research, traveler tips, and give you a real insider's view. We're talking everything from money and customs to, travel safety, even some cool sustainable stuff they're doing, basically getting you prepped for whatever you want to explore there.
Okay.
So to get us grounded, let's start with the practical side. Money. What's the deal with currency in the DR?
Right. So the local currency is the Dominican peso. DOP is the code. Just for context, around mid-June 2025, the mid-market rate was about 59.4 pesos to $1. But it's really important to remember that mid-market rate, it's more informational. You won't usually get that exact rate when you're actually, exchanging money or selling it. It'll be a bit different.
Okay, that's a helpful benchmark, though. So what does that mean for, like, daily costs when you're actually there? Is it expensive?
Well, here's the thing. If you step outside the big all-inclusive resorts, it can actually be pretty inexpensive. Surprisingly so, maybe. Like, you might find a decent mid-range hotel for around, say, 25 to 35 US dollars a day. And food, maybe 100 pesos for a sandwich, or near the coast, maybe 300 pesos for fresh fish and some tostones.
Wow, okay. That sounds really quite manageable.
Yeah, if you explore locally, you can find great value.
Okay, but thinking about getting ready before you go.
Mm-hmm.
Packing. We heard some interesting things about what people wish they'd brought. What's actually essential?
Yeah, this is where a bit of planning really pays off. Lots of travelers find out too late that things they'd normally just buy on a trip are, well, super expensive there, or
Oh,
just hard to find. That $20 bottle of sunscreen, it's kind of a classic example.
right.
It just shows how much imported goods can cost, especially in the tourist spots. So yeah, packing those little things can save you quite a bit.
Makes total sense. So besides sunscreen, what else falls into that pack everything you need category?
Okay, the strong advice is basically pack all your toiletries. Everything. We're talking sunscreen, aloe, shampoo, conditioner, body wash, razors, shaving cream, feminine hygiene products, all of it. And definitely think about basic over-the-counter meds. Tums, Tylenol or Advil, maybe some basic cold stuff, Pepto-Bismol, Imodium,
Yeah.
just in case. Better safe than sorry.
Right, you don't want to be hunting for that stuff when you're not feeling great. Any other clever packing items people recommend?
Oh yeah, some specific little things like those clips to hold your towel onto a beach chair. Apparently they're great. A good beach bag, obviously. Waterproof cases for phones are always smart. And here's a simple one. Save a few plastic grocery bags. They're perfect for packing, sandy flip-flops or wet swimsuits later. Keeps the sand out of everything else.
Right.
Oh, and maybe some hydrocortisone cream or calamine lotion for those inevitable mosquito bites.
Good call. Okay, so bags packed, budget considered. Let's shift gears. Let's dive into the culture, the flavor. Starting with the food, what's Dominican cuisine like?
Oh, it's fantastic. It's this really rich blend, mostly Spanish, indigenous Taino, and African influences all mixed together over like the last 500 years. It has some similarities to places like Puerto Rico and Cuba, sure, but the dish names and specific preparations are often unique to the DR.
Okay, any specific dishes or maybe mealtime traditions that are really central to Dominican life?
Definitely. For breakfast, you might get eggs or meat, but often with mango, that's mashed plantain.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, it's really good. Gives you lots of energy. But what's really distinctive is that lunch, almuerzo, is the biggest, most important meal of the day, kind of like in Spain. And the most typical lunch, they affectionately call it la bandera, the flag.
La bandera. Okay.
Yeah, it's basically rice, red beans, some kind of meat, could be beef, chicken, pork, fish, and a simple salad. It's real home-style cooking, hearty stuff.
Sounds delicious.
Yeah.
And what about social interactions? Like if you're invited to someone's home for dinner or just meeting people, what's the etiquette?
Good question. If you get invited to a Dominican home, it's customary and really appreciated if you bring a small gift, like chocolates or maybe some pastries. Greetings are usually a handshake, direct eye contact, and a nice, welcoming smile. Maintaining eye contact is important, shows you're interested and engaged. And here's a fun little detail about time.
Oh, yeah.
While being on time is good for, like, business meetings, for social things like dinner, arriving 15 to 30 minutes later than the stated time is actually considered perfectly fine, even expected. It's sort of politely on time.
Huh. That's really different. Good to know.
Yeah, it gives the hosts a little breathing room.
And you mentioned appearance earlier with packing.
Yeah.
How does that idea of presentation, dress, and appearance play out in daily interactions?
It's actually quite significant. Dominicans generally take a lot of pride in their appearance, and yeah, they often form initial impressions based on how people are dressed. They tend to be very fashion conscious. There is a belief that clothes can signal social standing, success, so people strive to wear good fabrics the best they can manage. And designer labels, especially American ones, are often viewed pretty favorably.
Okay, so that pride in appearance seems linked to the social structure.
Mm-hmm.
How does that fit into the broader picture of society there?
It does tie in. The social structure in the DR is complex, and it's definitely influenced by historical factors, both racial and economic. Generally speaking, the sort of upper class tends to be descended from European settlers, often with lighter skin. The lower class often includes people of darker skin descended from African slaves or, more recently, Haitians. But it's important to understand status isn't just about money, it's often more about family background, lineage. And historically, there hasn't been a huge amount of social mobility.
Right. Understanding the context must be important for visitors trying to connect respectfully.
Exactly. It helps foster more genuine interactions beyond just, tourist transactions.
And how does the family unit fit into all this? You hear it's central in many Latin cultures.
Absolutely central. The family is really the bedrock of stability, an individual's main social network, their support system. It all comes from the extended family. It's very common to have 3 generations living together, or at least very close by. And loyalty to the family. That usually comes before other relationships, even professional ones.
Okay, and religion.
Overwhelmingly Roman Catholic, something like 90% of the population. But the Constitution does guarantee freedom of religion for everyone.
Okay, great context. Now, let's say you're there soaking up the culture, ready to explore. How do you actually get around? What are the transport options?
The public transport system is actually pretty modern and covers a lot of ground. And it's generally affordable. Taxis are everywhere, of course. And ride-sharing apps like Uber and Cabify, they work well in the main cities, Santo Domingo, Santiago, Puerto Plata. Those apps can be really useful, especially if there's a language barrier. And sometimes the cars are in better shape, too.
Right. So beyond the usual taxis and ride shares, what else is there? Especially for longer distances or within towns.
For longer trips between regions, you've got really reliable coach bus services. Companies like Metro Tours, Caribe Tours, Expresso Bavaro. These are modern buses, air-conditioned, often have Wi-Fi, maybe even movies playing. Fares are decent, maybe RD $200 to RD $500 for a one-way trip.
Okay.
Then within cities, you'll see smaller minivan buses called guaguas. They're super cheap, but yeah, they can get really crowded.
Yeah.
And there are also shared taxis called conchos or carritos. They run set routes, kind of like minibuses.
I've also heard about motorbike taxis, motoconchos. Are they a good idea?
Motoconchos. Yes, they're very popular. They're fast, cheap, especially in traffic. However, they are widely considered the most dangerous way to travel, especially in heavy city traffic. Plus, they often don't provide helmets, even though it's technically the law.
Yikes.
So while they might be okay for a slow, scenic ride in a mountain town like Jarabacoa or Constanza, you really need to be cautious about using them in busy urban areas. Extreme caution.
Okay, duly noted. What if you want to drive yourself? Rent a car.
That's definitely an option. The Dominican Republic actually has quite a network of modern highways connecting the major cities and tourist areas. They're generally in good shape. You'd want to know the main routes, like the Autopista Duarte between Santo Domingo and Santiago, or the one out to the airport, Las Americas, or the one to Punta Cana, Oscar de la Renta. The North Coast Highway, too. Just be ready for tolls. They're common, usually around RD $60 to RD $100 per booth. So keeping small change in pesos is handy.
Good tip.
Yeah.
And the rental process itself, anything specific to know?
All the major rental companies are there at the airports and in cities. It's great if you want to really explore a specific region independently. A 4WD vehicle, maybe with GPS, is often recommended because road signs can be a bit sporadic sometimes.
Right.
You need to be at least 25 years old, have your valid license from home, and, crucially, get full insurance coverage. There's an option called Casa del Conductor. Definitely look into getting that. It can help avoid being immediately detained if you're involved in a serious accident with someone else.
Wow, okay. That sounds like very important advice.
It really is.
So besides roads, any other ways to hop between regions?
Yeah, you can take domestic charter flights. It's faster, obviously. There are smaller airports serving places like Santo Domingo's other airport, like Isabela, Samaná, Punta Cana, Puerto Plata, and down south in Barahona.
Okay. So now we know how to get around.
Hmm.
What should we actually do? Beyond the beach lounger, what are some must-sees or must-dos?
Oh, there's so much. Santo Domingo's colonial zone, for starters, it's a UNESCO site. The oldest European settlement buildings in the Americas are there. It's incredibly atmospheric. If you're into water sports, Cabaret Day up on the north coast is world famous for windsurfing and kite surfing. And if you time it right, January to mid-March, seeing the humpback whales off the Samaná Peninsula, that's just unforgettable.
That sounds amazing. Any maybe less famous spots or unique experiences that are real hidden gems?
Yeah, definitely. For something different, check out Cachote up in the mountains. It's this cool, misty cloud forest retreat. Really beautiful and peaceful. For sheer beach beauty, many say Bahía de las Águilas down in the southwest is the most stunning beach in the entire country. It's pretty remote, but worth it. Wildlife lovers should head to Laguna de Oviedo, also in the southwest. You can see huge flocks of flamingos especially. Jarabacoa is known as the adventure capital of think trekking rafting. It's also the starting point for climbing Pico Duarte, the highest peak in the Caribbean. And if you're there in February, La Vega's Carnival on Sundays is just an explosion of color and energy. Really incredible.
Sounds like there's something for every season. But is there generally a best time to visit for all this?
Generally, yeah, the period from December through April is often considered the peak season. The weather is lovely, consistently warm, rarely below 80 Fahrenheit or 26, 27 Celsius. Winter months are great for hiking. January to March, like I said, prime whale watching. But if seeing wildlife like those flamingos is high on your list, then May to July is better during their feeding season down at Lago Enriquillo and Laguna de Oviedo.
Okay, lots to consider there. Now, let's shift to something really crucial. Safety and health. What's the general advice for travelers regarding safety?
Right, this is important. The advice from governments like Canada's is to exercise a high degree of caution in the Dominican Republic. Crime, unfortunately, including violent crime, does happen across the country. It's more prevalent in major cities, and it's worth knowing that police response can be slow sometimes, especially outside the main tourist zones.
Okay, high degree of caution. What specific types of crime should people be most aware of?
Petty crime is pretty common. Pickpocketing, bag snatching. Tourists can be targets at resorts, in parked cars, on beaches, at airports, even on public transport. Drive-by robberies, often by thieves on motorcycles, also happen. And unfortunately, more serious violent crime like armed robbery, assault, burglary, it can occur, especially after dark in the bigger cities. So, basic precautions. Try to arrive and leave places during daylight, keep car doors locked, windows up when driving.
That sounds like sensible advice anywhere, really.
Yeah.
But you mentioned specific concerns for women and two LGBTQI+ travelers who've reported harassment.
Yes, sadly, incidents of sexual assault and rape have been reported. This has included incidents at major resorts, sometimes involving hotel staff. So it's absolutely critical to avoid isolated areas, be very careful with strangers, and avoid using public transport or walking alone, especially at night. And if, God forbid, you are a victim of any crime, report it immediately. Contact your home country's embassy or consulate right away and file a formal police report with the Dominican authorities before you leave the country. That's crucial.
Really important points. What about nonviolent crime, like fraud?
Card fraud, credit, debit, ATM skimming, it's quite frequent. So be vigilant when using card readers. Always cover the keypad when you enter your PIN on. Try to use ATMs in well-lit public places or inside banks. Also, there are reports of unethical lawyers, sometimes called pirate lawyers, particularly in tourist hubs like Punta Cana, who might try to charge exorbitant fees. And be aware of cybercrime risks and romance scams, too. Be cautious with public Wi-Fi and who you interact with online.
Okay. And one more risk, maybe less obvious, spiked food or drinks.
Yes, definitely something to be aware of. Never leave your food or drinks unattended. Never accept them from strangers. There have been cases where drinks were spiked with drugs to facilitate robbery or sexual assault. Just be vigilant.
Okay. Switching to health now, what medical preparations should people consider?
Best practice is always to see your doctor or a travel health clinic at least 6 weeks before you go. Discuss routine shots, make sure they're up to date, and talk about specific travel vaccines like Hep A, Hep B, maybe COVID-19 boosters, the annual flu shot. There's no yellow fever risk in the DR, but you might need proof of vaccination if you're arriving from certain parts of Brazil, for example.
Got it. What about common travel illnesses people might run into?
Traveler's diarrhea is, pretty common. So really stick to safe food and water habits. You know the saying, boil it, cook it, peel it, or leave it.
Right.
Carrying some oral rehydration salts is a smart move. There is a risk of cholera in some areas, and salmonella infections are also relatively common.
And bugs? Mosquito-borne diseases.
Yes, that's definitely a concern. Dengue, chikungunya, and Zika virus are all transmitted by mosquitoes there. So protecting yourself from bites is key. Use repellent consistently, wear long sleeves and pants when possible, especially at dawn and dusk. There's also something called oropush virus disease, spread by midges and mosquitoes. Pregnant individuals, or those planning pregnancy, should really talk to their doctor about the risks of travel to affected areas, and rabies. It's present in dogs and some wildlife, like bats. If you get bitten or scratched, wash the wound thoroughly immediately and seek medical help. Rabies treatment might be limited there.
Okay, and if you do need medical help, what's the situation with healthcare quality?
Good quality healthcare is mostly found only in the major cities, and even then the quality can vary. Public clinics might be under-resourced, crowded. Private hospitals are generally better equipped, but they almost always demand payment up front. And there have been issues with overcharging or recommending unnecessary stays. Be a bit wary of in-house resort doctors too. Sometimes they can be pushy with services.
So travel insurance sounds absolutely essential.
Absolutely essential. And make sure it specifically covers medical evacuation and hospital stays. Don't skimp on that.
Right. Moving towards wrapping up the practicalities, entry requirements. What do most tourists need?
Okay, so for tourism, generally you just need a passport that's valid for your entire stay. This rule is currently set until November 30th, 2025. You also need to fill out an electronic form before you fly. It's called the e-ticket. It combines your immigration, customs, and health info into one digital thing. You can show it on your phone or print it out for customs. This e-ticket thing replaces some older forms, but the tourist card fee. That's usually just included in your airfare if you fly in.
Okay, simple enough.
Uh.
And once you're in the country, what about local laws? For instance, drug possession. Policies vary so much.
The Dominican Republic has a strict zero-tolerance policy for illegal drugs, and that includes cannabis. Penalties for having, using, or trafficking drugs are really severe. We're talking long jail sentences, heavy fines, even for tiny amounts. And be aware, traffickers have sometimes used unsuspecting tourists to carry drugs, which leads to major trouble. So, rule number 1, pack your own bags, only carry your own stuff, and never leave it unattended. Ever.
Very clear. What about just interacting with police or authorities?
They can ask to see your ID at any time, so always carry your valid ID, or at least a clear photocopy. If you're in a car accident, you have to call the police and wait right there at the scene. Don't leave. And if you are ever arrested or detained for any reason, make it very clear you want them to contact your country's embassy or consulate immediately. Ask clearly.
Okay, let's wrap up our deep dive by looking at the natural environment itself. Climate, natural risks.
What's the picture? Well, it's a tropical paradise, no doubt, but like everywhere, it's feeling the effects of climate change. Extreme weather events are becoming more frequent.
Right. And a big concern in the Caribbean is always hurricanes. What's the reality during hurricane season in the DR?
The official season runs from mid-May through the end of November. The peak risk is usually August and September. Now, while series storms don't hit every single year, even smaller tropical storms can intensify into major hurricanes quite quickly. However, it's worth putting it in perspective. Compared to some other islands, the DR is relatively less impacted. Major destructive hurricanes only make landfall on its coast maybe once every 5 to 10 years on average.
Okay, so it's a risk, but maybe not a constant yearly threat. What does that mean for travelers thinking about going during that season?
It means you absolutely can still visit, but you just need to be prepared. Be ready to potentially change plans on short notice if a storm develops. Stay glued to weather forecasts. Follow all instructions from local authorities. Some areas, like Punta Cana, are even considered quite safe due to geography, like being protected by mountains. Plus, hotels are generally well prepared. They often have designated safe areas like conference rooms, and staff are trained for emergencies. That offers some peace of mind.
Good to know. Any other natural risks besides hurricanes?
Flooding is something to be aware of, especially after heavy rains. It can make roads impassable and damage infrastructure, so be careful near rivers during or after storms. The DR is also in an active seismic zone. Earth tremors happen fairly often, usually small ones you don't notice, but larger earthquakes are possible. And if a significant quake occurs near the coast, tsunamis are a risk. They can arrive within minutes, but the danger can last for hours. So if you're staying near the coast, it's smart to know the evacuation routes.
Okay, wow, we have covered a lot of ground today, from, the cultural nuances of being fashion conscious and politely late to the practicalities of packing Pepto-Bismol and navigating guaguas, plus the serious side of safety and understanding natural risks.
Yeah, and when you pull it all together, you see the Dominican Republic isn't just this beautiful place for a vacation, though it certainly is that. It's also doing some really interesting things, particularly in sustainable tourism. You look at groups like Punta Cana Group, they're actively working on protecting coral reefs, conserving endangered species, investing heavily in their local communities. It really is a place of fascinating contrasts,
Wow.
relaxation, adventure, deep cultural roots, and this forward-looking commitment.
It's genuinely interesting, isn't it, how they seem to be navigating that balance between welcoming tourists and preserving their incredible natural and cultural heritage while supporting their own people. So as we wrap up this deep dive, here's something to maybe chew on. In our increasingly interconnected world, how might the Dominican Republic's way of blending its unique culture, its economic needs, and its environmental efforts offer some lessons, perhaps, for other popular destinations facing similar pressures and challenges? A lot to think about there. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive today.